The sunset painted the sky crimson as Victoria Lawson's trembling fingers clutched the shotgun beneath the bar of the Dusty Diamond Saloon, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild Mustang trying to break free. It wasn't supposed to be like this, not today. Not when the little mining town of Silverdale was celebrating its 10th anniversary since striking silver in the nearby hills. Victoria had only been working at the saloon for 6 months, having arrived in Silverdale, Arizona territory with nothing but a small carpet bag and dreams of a fresh start after her father's passing left her without a home back east. At 22, she'd quickly learned that a woman alone in the West had limited options, but the Dusty Diamond had been a blessing in disguise. Old Man Jenkins, the proprietor, treated his girls with respect, and while serving drinks and making small talk with miners wasn't the life she'd imagined, it paid well enough to put a roof over her head and food on her table. "They're still out there," whispered Eliza, one of the younger saloon girls, her voice cracking as she huddled with 3 other women behind the long mahogany bar. "I count at least 8 of them." "Rodrigo Vargas and his gang," Victoria replied, her knuckles whitening around the shotgun. "I recognize the red bandanas." Everyone in the territory knew of Vargas and his murderous band of outlaws who had been terrorizing towns across the Arizona territory since 1879. It was 1883, and Silverdale had grown prosperous enough to attract the wrong kind of attention. The town marshal and his deputy had ridden out that morning to investigate reports of cattle rustling at the Henderson Ranch, leaving the town vulnerable. Vargas must have planned it this way. "Ladies, I believe we've given these gentlemen enough time to reconsider their position," called out a deep voice from near the piano. "Miss Lawson, I'd appreciate if you'd keep that shotgun trained on the front door. I don't intend to have any unwelcome visitors interrupting our conversation." The voice belonged to Thomas Weston, a tall, broad-shouldered cowboy who had arrived in town just 3 days prior. Victoria knew little about him except that he kept to himself, drank whiskey straight, and tipped generously. Now he was the only man standing between them and Vargas's gang, the other patrons having fled through the back when the shooting started. "What conversation?" Victoria called back, confusion mingling with fear. "Those men out there want the money from the bank robbery last month the strongbox Jenkins keeps in his office." "I'm aware," Thomas replied calmly, checking the chambers of his Colt revolver, "but I don't believe they're going to get it. Not today." Victoria exchanged glances with the other girls. The man was either incredibly brave or disturbingly foolish. Either way, they were trapped. "We know you're in there, Weston," a gruff voice shouted from outside. "Hand over the women and the money, and maybe we'll let you ride out." Thomas's expression hardened. "You know my name, Vargas, which means you know my reputation. I've got no quarrel with you, but if you step 1 foot inside this saloon, that's going to change mighty quick." Victoria's breath caught. Who exactly was this stranger? Eliza clutched Victoria's arm. "He knows Vargas." "Victoria, who is he?" Before she could answer, the front window shattered as a bottle flew through, erupting into flames as it hit the floor, a makeshift firebomb. Thomas moved with surprising speed, grabbing a tablecloth and smothering the flames before they could spread. "Ladies, I need you to move to the back room," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Take what weapons you have. If I can't hold them here, you'll need to defend yourselves." "We're not leaving you alone," Victoria said firmly, surprising herself with her boldness. "I can shoot, and so can Daisy." The blonde woman beside her nodded, her face pale but determined as she clutched a small derringer. Thomas studied Victoria for a moment, his blue eyes intense beneath the brim of his worn Stetson. "All right, Miss Lawson. But stay low and don't take any unnecessary risks. These men won't hesitate to kill." For the next hour, they remained in a tense standoff. Occasional shots were fired through the windows, forcing them to keep to the walls and behind overturned tables. Thomas was methodical, conserving ammunition and taking careful shots only when he had a clear target. "You've done this before," Victoria observed during a lull in the gunfire, watching as he reloaded his revolver with practiced efficiency. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I rode with the Texas Rangers for 5 years. Spent the last 2 tracking gangs like Vargas's across the territories. You're a lawman, she asked, surprised. Was he corrected? Now I'm just a man trying to find a quiet place to settle down. Well, Mr. Weston, you certainly picked the wrong saloon for a quiet drink, she replied, attempting humor despite their dire situation. His chuckle was warm and unexpected. Perhaps, but I can't say I mind the company, Miss Lawson. Their eyes met, and Victoria felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. In the midst of danger, something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits caught in extraordinary circumstances. The moment was shattered by a voice calling out from the street. Weston, we've got barrels of coal oil out here. Give us what we want, or we burn this place to the ground with all of you inside. Thomas's expression darkened. He's not bluffing. Vargas burned a stagecoach station in New Mexico last year, killed everyone inside. Victoria swallowed hard. What do? We need help, he replied, his mind clearly racing. Silverdale's not a coward's town. There are good men here who'll fight if someone gives them a reason to stand together. But how do we reach them? We're surrounded. Thomas glanced toward the back of the saloon. There's a trapdoor in the storeroom that leads to the cellar. Jenkins showed me when I helped him bring up a cask of whiskey yesterday. The cellar connects to a tunnel that was dug during the Apache raids back in '75. It comes out behind the livery stable. Hope sparked in Victoria's eyes. I can go. I know most everyone in town. It's too dangerous, Thomas objected. If they catch you, they won't, she insisted. I grew up with 3 older brothers, Mr. Weston. I can move quietly when I need to. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Take this, he said, pressing a small pistol into her hand. And Victoria. Be careful. The use of her given name wasn't lost on her. I will, and Thomas, don't you dare die before I get back. His lips curved into a genuine smile. Yes, madam. The tunnel was dark and smelled of damp earth, but Victoria moved quickly, guided by a small lantern she'd brought from the storeroom. Her mind raced with the names of townspeople who might help Mr. Hollister, the blacksmith doctor. Pearson, who'd served in the Union Army, the Carter brothers who ran the general store. Emerging behind the livery stable, she carefully surveyed her surroundings before making her way through back alleys. She first approached the blacksmith shop, where she found not only Mr. Hollister but 3 miners who had taken shelter there when the shooting began. Miss Lawson, Hollister exclaimed, lowering the shotgun he'd raised at her entrance. We thought you were trapped in the saloon with the others. I still have friends there, she said urgently, including a former Texas Ranger who's the only reason those bandits haven't stormed the place already, but they're threatening to burn it down. Vargas and his men have been a plague on these territories for too long, one of the miners growled. I lost my brother to them last year. Then help us fight, Victoria pleaded. Thomas, Mr. Weston believes that if enough of us stand together, Vargas will back down. Or we'll send him straight to hell, Hollister said grimly, reaching for his rifle. I'll spread the word. You go to Doc Pearson's. He keeps a small arsenal from his army days. For the next half hour, Victoria moved through town, gathering supporters. Dr. Pearson not only offered his firearms, but his strategic mind. The Carter brothers closed their store to join the cause. Miners, ranchers, and shopkeepers who had been hiding in their homes stepped forward, anger replacing fear as they realized the opportunity to reclaim their town. By the time Victoria led them back through the tunnel, nearly 20 armed men followed her. Thomas's eyes widened in surprise when they emerged into the storeroom. You're quite the recruiter, Miss Lawson, he said, genuine admiration in his voice. These are good people defending their home, she replied. Now, what's the plan? With Dr. Pearson's help, Thomas quickly organized their newfound allies. They positioned sharpshooters in the upstairs rooms and arranged for a group to circle around and approach from behind the bandits. The remaining defenders prepared to fight from within the saloon itself. Vargas, Thomas called out once everyone was in position. I think it's time we renegotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, Weston, came the angry reply. You're out of time. Actually, Thomas responded, you're the one surrounded now. Look around you. On his signal, the townspeople who had circled behind revealed themselves, weapons raised. Simultaneously, the upstairs windows of the saloon opened, revealing more armed defenders. A tense silence fell over the street. Victoria held her breath, gripping her shotgun tightly as she stood beside Thomas behind an overturned table. "This doesn't have to end with bloodshed, Vargas," Thomas called out. "Drop your weapons and ride out. We'll give you that chance, which is more than you deserve." For several agonizing moments, there was no response. Then a bitter laugh echoed from outside. "You think this is over, Weston? This is just beginning," Vargas shouted. "I'll be back with twice as many men." "And we'll be waiting," Thomas replied steadily. "But right now, you're facing 20 armed citizens who are tired of living in fear. Make your choice." The standoff stretched for what felt like an eternity before the sound of retreating hoofbeats confirmed that Vargas had chosen to withdraw. A cheer went up from the defenders, but Thomas remained vigilant. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "Set up watches. Vargas isn't a man who accepts defeat easily." As the townspeople organized themselves, Victoria found a moment alone with Thomas. "Thank you," she said softly. "You could have left when the shooting started, but you stayed." He studied her face, his expression softening. "I've been running for a while, Miss Lawson. Maybe it's time to stop." "Running from what?" she asked. "Memories, ghosts." He glanced away. "I've seen too much death. Done things I'm not proud of in the name of justice. Yet today you protected people who were strangers to you," she pointed out. "That seems like something to be proud of." Before he could respond, Mr. Jenkins burst into the saloon, having returned from a supply run to find his establishment at the center of an armed conflict. "What in tarnation happened here?" he demanded, surveying the broken windows and overturned furniture. As the situation was explained to him, Jenkins's initial anger transformed into gratitude. "Well, Mr. Weston, it seems we owe you a debt of gratitude. Drinks are on the house tonight for everyone who stood with us." Another cheer went up, the tension of the day giving way to relief. As the townspeople began to relax, Thomas touched Victoria's elbow gently. "Walk with me," he asked quietly. Outside, the evening air had cooled and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They strolled toward the small town square, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. "Vargas will be back," Thomas said, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "I know," Victoria replied, "but we'll be ready." He raised an eyebrow. "This is my home now," she said simply. "I'm not running," he nodded slowly. "I admire that about you, Victoria. Your courage. What about you? Will you stay? Silverdale could use a man with your experience." Thomas was quiet for a moment, looking out at the town that had come together in the face of danger. "I wasn't planning to, but plans change. Is that why you were here, just passing through?" "Initially," he admitted. "But I received a telegram in Tucson about Vargas possibly heading this way. I thought I might warn the town marshal, maybe help if needed." "So you came here to protect people you didn't even know," Victoria said, a newfound respect in her voice. He shrugged. "Old habits. Good habits," she corrected. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Pearson, who approached with a determined expression. "Weston, the town council is gathering at the courthouse. We'd like you to join us. We have a proposition for you." Thomas glanced at Victoria, who nodded encouragingly. "Go. I'll be at the saloon." The council's proposition was straightforward. With the town marshal proving increasingly ineffective against threats like Vargas, Silverdale needed someone with experience. They offered Thomas the position of town sheriff, complete with lodging and a respectable salary. "I'm flattered," Thomas said, genuinely surprised by the offer. "But I should warn you, I've made enemies, men like Vargas." "All the more reason to have you on our side," replied Mayor Hamilton. "Today showed us what happens when good people stand together. But they need leadership, someone who knows how to face men like Vargas." Thomas thought of Victoria and her unwavering courage. He thought of the townspeople who had risked their lives to defend their home. For the first time in years, he felt a pull toward something other than the next horizon. "I'll accept on one condition," he said finally. "I want to train volunteers, a town militia. If Vargas returns with more men, we need to be prepared." The council readily agreed, and by the time Thomas returned to the Dusty Diamond, word of his new position had already spread. He found Victoria behind the bar, serving drinks to the remaining defenders who were still celebrating their victory. "Should I call you Sheriff Weston now?" she asked with a smile when he approached. "Just Thomas is fine," he replied, returning her smile, "especially from you." Over the next few weeks, Silverdale transformed. Under Thomas's guidance, the town organized regular defensive drills. Barricades were erected at key points, and lookouts were posted on a rotating schedule. The saloon girls, led by Victoria, insisted on learning to shoot properly, and Thomas found himself impressed by their determination. During this time, Thomas and Victoria grew closer. Their shared experience during the standoff had created a bond that deepened with each passing day. He admired her quick mind and independent spirit, while she was drawn to his quiet strength and sense of justice. 2 months after Thomas accepted the sheriff's position, a rider arrived with news. Vargas had been captured by a U.S. Marshal's posse near the Mexican border after a failed bank robbery. The threat that had hung over Silverdale like a storm cloud finally dissipated. That evening, Thomas found Victoria sitting on the small porch behind the saloon, gazing at the sunset. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, taking a seat beside her. "I was thinking about change," she replied. "How sometimes it comes violently, like with Vargas, and sometimes it comes so gradually you hardly notice until one day you realize everything is different. Different good or different bad?" he asked. She turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "Different good, definitely good." Thomas reached out, tentatively taking her hand in his. "Victoria, I need to tell you something. Before I came here, I wasn't just drifting. I was running from my past, from the memories of a raid gone wrong near the border. 3 innocent people died because of a mistake I made." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Is that why you left the Rangers?" He nodded. "I couldn't wear the badge anymore, not after that. I thought I'd never deserve to again. And now I realize that dwelling in the past doesn't honor those who were lost. The only way to make amends is to protect others, to use what I know to prevent more tragedy." He paused, gathering his courage. "And I've found something else worth staying for." Her breath caught as their eyes met. "Have you now, Sheriff?" "I have," he said softly. "You showed me what real courage looks like, Victoria. Not the kind that comes from a gun, but the kind that stands firm when it would be easier to run." "I believe we showed each other," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper as he leaned closer. Their first kiss was gentle, a question and an answer all at once. When they parted, both were smiling, something unspoken but profound having passed between them. The following months saw Silverdale flourish. With security established, more families moved to the area, bringing growth and prosperity. Thomas proved to be a fair and effective sheriff, while Victoria, with Jenkins's blessing, began managing the saloon, transforming it into a more respectable establishment that served food alongside drinks. By Christmas of 1883, their courtship was the talk of the town. Thomas proposed on New Year's Eve during the town's celebration, presenting Victoria with a simple silver ring that had belonged to his mother. "It's not fancy," he apologized as he slipped it onto her finger, "but it's been waiting for the right woman." "I never thought I'd find her in a saloon standoff," Victoria laughed, tears of joy in her eyes. "I never thought I'd find love at the end of a shotgun, either. But here we are." They were married in the spring of 1884, with the entire town turning out for the celebration. Even Mr. Jenkins shed a tear as he gave the bride away, having come to think of Victoria as the daughter he never had. After the wedding, Thomas surprised Victoria with the deed to a small ranch just outside of town. "I've been saving my sheriff's salary," he explained as he showed her the modest but sturdy house and barn. "I thought maybe we could build something here, something permanent." Victoria explored the house, already imagining curtains at the windows and flowers in the yard. "It's perfect, Thomas. A place of our own." Life as Mrs. Weston suited Victoria. She continued to help manage the saloon during the day while establishing their home. Thomas remained sheriff but found time to work the ranch with the help of a young cowhand they hired. They planted a vegetable garden and acquired a few milk cows and chickens, creating a small but productive homestead. In the summer of 1885, Victoria shared the news that they would be welcoming a child the following winter. Thomas's joy was beyond words as he lifted her in his arms, spinning her around their kitchen. "A family," he whispered against her hair. "Our family." Their daughter, Eleanor, was born on a snowy night in January 1886, with Dr. Pearson attending and half the town waiting anxiously for news. Thomas paced the hallway for hours until the doctor emerged with a broad smile. "Congratulations, Sheriff. You have a healthy daughter and a strong wife." When Thomas entered the bedroom and saw Victoria cradling their tiny daughter, something inside him healed completely. The ghosts that had haunted him for so long faded in the presence of this new life they had created together. "She's beautiful," he murmured, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "Just like her mother." Victoria smiled tiredly. "I was thinking we could call her Eleanor after my mother." "Eleanor Weston," Thomas tested the name. "It's perfect." As Silverdale continued to grow, so did the Weston family. 2 years after Eleanor's birth, Victoria gave birth to a son they named James. Their ranch expanded as well, with Thomas gradually shifting more of his focus to ranching as the town became more civilized and the need for an experienced lawman lessened. By 1890, Thomas had trained his deputy, a capable young man named Michael Foster, to take over as sheriff. The transition allowed Thomas to devote himself fully to his family and their now thriving ranch. That summer, as they celebrated Silverdale's anniversary, Victoria and Thomas found themselves back at the Dusty Diamond, which had been transformed into a proper restaurant and hotel under new ownership after Jenkins retired. "Hard to believe it's been 7 years since that standoff," Thomas remarked as they shared a quiet dinner while their children stayed with friends. Victoria nodded, looking around at the renovated space. "Sometimes I can still hear the gunshots and breaking glass. But then, I remember what came after, how the town came together, how we found each other." Thomas reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb brushing over the wedding band that had joined her engagement ring. "I came to Silverdale looking for redemption. Instead, I found a home and a purpose. And love," Victoria added softly. "Don't forget that part." His eyes, still as blue and intense as the day they met, crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Never. That's the best part of the story." As they walked home under the stars, arms linked and hearts full, Victoria reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A desperate standoff had been the beginning of a love that had only grown stronger through the years, a love born in danger but nurtured in peace. The Weston Ranch stood as a testament to what they had built together, not just a home but a legacy of courage and commitment. From the porch, they could see the lights of Silverdale in the distance, a town that had faced its demons and emerged stronger. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked as they paused to admire the view. "Staying here, settling down," Thomas pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "Not for a single moment. Every day with you and our children is a blessing I never thought I'd deserve." "You always deserved happiness, Thomas," she replied, turning in his arms to face him. "You just needed to believe it yourself." As their lips met beneath the vast Arizona sky, Victoria knew that their story, one that began with danger and desperation, had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. A love that, like the town of Silverdale itself, had faced its trials and emerged stronger, a beacon of hope in the wild frontier they called home. And in the years that followed, as their children grew and their ranch prospered, Thomas and Victoria Weston remained a living reminder of what could be built from the ashes of conflict. A love strong enough to defend, resilient enough to endure, and deep enough to heal even the most wounded hearts in the wild, untamed West.